just fun to get scared.
I mean, Halloween is a time where people want to be afraid. But I wonder these days, is that even really necessary? I mean, isn't reality kind of scary enough right now? So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to find out what truly scares the shit out of Canadians. Karen Martin has been scaring the hell out of her neighborhood for years.
Love hearing the kids screaming. It's kind of a bit of a rite of passage in this neighborhood.
Karen, what scares the shit out of you?
I would say what's happening with young adults right now. You have, kids overdosing. You have kids committing suicide. You have kids with a lot of kids have a lot of mental health issues. Yeah, that scares the living shit out of me, honestly. Being a mother of 2 young adults.
That's one of the classic fears. Parents scared for their kids. But what about the kids? What are young people afraid of these days? What scares the shit out of you?
I guess growing up in an area like this, seeing all these amazing families and white picket fence situations. I'd love to have a family in a big house environment where I could do something like this for my neighborhood, but the older I'm getting, the more less likely that seems possible. And I guess that's what scares me most as someone who's 22.
It is pretty scary how unaffordable housing has become, even since the beginning of the pandemic, which is, of course, the scary thing we've all been through over the past few years, and it's not over.
There is a lot of COVID out there. We're in the midst of probably what's the next wave. We don't know how big that's going to be. COVID is going to be with us for a very, very long time.
That's Brad Waters. As the head of research at the University Health Network in Toronto, he's been fighting COVID since the beginning. I mean, what scares the hell out of you?
The thing that scares me the most about the pandemic is really that, scientists and science and research may get forgotten again. Science was thrust into the spotlight during the pandemic. And I worry that with the fading of COVID and the fading of some of the fears with COVID will also be a fading of the appreciation of science, and that scientists will be forgotten and go back and inside their ivory towers or inside their scientific bubbles and continue on.
But even with all the real fears in life, there are people who want more. They feel the need to be scared so much that they spend their hard-earned money coming to a place like this. This is Screamers, one of the longest-running haunted houses in the country. Let's see what we can find out here. Hey, let me ask you this. What scares you?
I think what scares me the most is probably the end of the world and the potential for nuclear war.
What do you mean?
Just with everything going on in the world right now with Russia and Ukraine, there's going to be backlash, I feel like, with everyone, and it's a scary thought. So that's what scares me, even though I look like this.
And if you're wondering, yeah, I know this place is fake, but even so. Oh, man. Hey, what about you? What scares you?
What scares me the most is probably cancer. It runs in my family, and there's no cure for it, so it's probably one of the scariest things.
Do you think about that?
I do. All my family members have passed away from cancer.
I guess what I'm wondering is, do we need fear in our lives? To answer that, I've come to this haunted tavern, where James White runs the biggest seances in the country.
Are you there? Ask the dead question. Wait, don't go in there.
Honestly, for the seance, I don't try to scare them. They just get scared on their own. So that's on them. I don't try to, but when I do see someone break and cry, I do try to help them because I don't want them to feel that. They feel it on their own, but there is a lot of crying, there's a lot of screaming, there's a lot of, mostly crying to be honest.
I think you probably now understand why James is an expert on the psychology of fear. Isn't reality scary enough?
Reality is definitely scary enough, but I think people want to have fear in a sense where they're protected. So maybe why they come to my seances is because they're actually go into a controlled fear. So what I mean by that is they don't think anything's going to follow them home. They don't think anything bad's going to happen to them. So they get that feeling of fear that they enjoy without feeling like in a horrible situation after.
You know, what role do you think fear plays in our lives?
So I think fear is kind of like an essential human feeling. Like it literally, in order to be human, you need to have fear. So I think it's almost like the autopilot of when you're trying to survive. You know, it kind of makes you react a certain way so you don't get in trouble. So it's almost like your spidey senses are coming out. Maybe it allows the brain to kind of comprehend what's going on at the time.
No matter what kind of fear you have, the unknown kind or the rising inflation kind, maybe the most important question now is how to cope with what scares us. Now, I've lined up another expert for that. Her name is Penelope. We're talking to adults about all the fears they have, like inflation and that they can't buy a house, all those kinds of things. What advice would you give adults to cope with their fears?
They just have to believe in themselves.
What do you mean?
Like, if they believe in themselves, then they can do it. They can get the house and stuff.
These days, the list of fears we need to deal with is long. From affordability to world war. Wouldn't it be nice if the scariest thing around actually were these actors? Nick Purden, CBC News, Toronto.